Secretary Mayorkas, yesterday your impeachment trial ensued in the Senate. I don't see this as a happy day or a day that I take relish or pleasure in, but it's a sad day in the sense that it's come to this. This isn't a debate over policy. This was a debate over malfeasance, a debate over whether you've been telling the truth and whether you've been enforcing the law. We have a disaster at our southern border, a disaster that becomes very personal to people. Lake and Riley's family, this disaster cost them the loss of a loved one. We have a disaster where people show up at the border every day and they just simply say, hey, I'm Joe Smith from Venezuela, and then they waltz on in. There's supposed to be rules. There are rules about paroling people. Under the Trump administration, a very small number of people were paroled. Under this administration, it's become a blanket parole. There's been the question, and you've been asked repeatedly, you testified to Senator Graham last year that parole is individualized. But then the administration has admitted that it's a public benefit to have migrants come in as migrants as opposed to illegal aliens, as if it's a difference. You know, 1 million people come by and we don't see them at all, and 1 million people come by and they stop and we give them migrant status, and somehow that's better, and there's a public benefit to that. But that's not individualized. That's judging people as a group. But I can't help but be sad for Lake and Riley and her family who didn't have to have this. And he wasn't paroled for any of those reasons. And we're going to get into that in the question and answer. You've either said you don't have the knowledge, you've been asked about this multiple times, but we're going to ask again, how did the murder of Lake and Riley get into this country? And what is the statute that allowed you to do it? How could you? And how could you sleep at night, you know, having done that? You know, there are laws. I mean, and that's what this is about. It isn't about whether or not the Biden administration believes in an open border policy. It's about whether we have laws and you're going to enforce them at all. The last administration was enforcing the law, and you just haven't been enforcing the law. And millions of people are coming across, and they've committed heinous crimes and murder. And Lake and Riley's family will never get her back. And yet that man came in and apparently was let go because they said it was full. There's no statute saying that when the camps are full, you just let people in. We have a system where we're just saying, hey, what's your name? And then we fingerprint you and then off you go. I mean, we had over 300 people on the terrorist watch list come in and then are found at a later date to be on the watch list. We have people coming to New York. We fly them to New York. We give them money. We put them up in a hotel. They assault a police officer, and then as they come out past the cameras, they're flipping the bird to everybody in America. That's a sad day for America, and you presided over this. You presided over just a disastrous border. And it isn't a matter of policy. It isn't a matter of you like open borders and we like, a more secure border. There's a law. We have a law, and you're supposed to enforce that law. And yesterday was a sad day because the majority went ahead and set the precedent that having lied to Congress, there wasn't going to be an examination of whether you lied to Congress. They were just going to simply say lying to Congress didn't rise high enough to be high crimes and misdemeanors. Chairman says, oh, we're just throwing rocks is why we didn't fix the border policy. It's just not true at all. The fix that was advanced legislatively was a fix that would have allowed 5,000 people a day before we would have taken extraordinary measures to try to slow the influx of migrants. But even after 5,000 a day, it was going to let migrants of no limit still come through the ports of entry. So it really wasn't a reform. It was a whitewash. All of the laws that existed under the Trump administration still exist under the Biden administration. You have all the powers that you need. The laws on accepting migrants to this country says the executive may admit migrants. Doesn't say the executive branch shall admit migrants. You could simply say we're full up and we've got too many criminals and we've got the horrendous thing that happened to Lake and Riley and to others. And we're just full, and we're going to stop taking migrants for a while until we can sort out the mess we have at the border. You have every power to do that now. You just don't utilize those powers. But it isn't about really being good at utilizing the power. We just think you're not obeying the law. And I think it is a sad day. Yesterday was a sad day that we had to impeach a member of the cabinet. But today is a sad day that the majority chose not to even hear the arguments, not to see the proof one way or the other and have a real trial. So I look forward to trying to get some of the answers today, and I hope you will tell the truth. I hope you will not just simply say, I don't know. You've been asked many times about Laken Riley's family. You should know everything about the alleged murderer, and I hope you'll explain to us how he got into this country and why that happened.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Emeritus. Mr. Secretary, you've seen this chart before. This chart not only shows just the undeniable reality of the catastrophe of your open border policy, but it also shows cause and effect. You know, dating back to 2012, the unlawful deferred action on childhood arrivals, that's what sparked all the subsequent crises. But I want to focus in the crisis that President Trump faced because of DACA, because of the reinterpretation of the Flores settlement. He was rapidly, the number of apprehensions or number of encounters at the border was rapidly increasing to peak in May of 2019 at about 4,800 per day. By the way, back in 2014, Obama hit his humanitarian crisis, when you were part of, when you were Assistant Secretary, 2,200 a day. And President Obama called that a humanitarian crisis. But President Trump took action. He used the existing authority, although weakened by the Flores settlement reinterpretation. He used that authority and he secured the border. By April of 2020, we were down to a little over 500 individuals encountered at the border per day. 500, from almost 5,000. When you entered office, you reversed all those successful policies. And you opened up the border, and you've created this catastrophe, and it is a catastrophe. You know, 6 million people, more than 6 million people, the 31 states have a population less than the number of people you've let in, you know, flooding these sanctuary cities. So I've got a very simple question. Why did you do it?
Senator,
why did you reverse those policies? Why did you open up the border? Why did you create this catastrophe?
Senator, I respectfully disagree with the premise of your question. We did not open up the border. Senator, we enforce the law. We are facing...
Do you deny you reversed the Trump policies that had secured the border?
No, Senator.
You deny that?
No, Senator. That is not what I said. We enforce the law.
You reversed the Trump policies that had secured the border.
Senator, if we can look at your chart, I cannot see the bar graphs. Forgive me, the chair is blocking them. But the former president's Remain in Mexico policy was implemented in January of 2019, and 2019 saw an almost 100% increase in the number of encounters over 2018.
Mr. Senator, it went down to 500, and then with COVID, he started expelling people under Title 42, which, by the way, you canceled, and you didn't have to do that. Let me ask you another question. Senator Paul was talking about Laken Riley. I mean, I on the floor of the Senate, read a list of a dozen people in the last 4 months publicized murders, rapes, a 2-year-old caught in the crossfire, crimes committed by people in this country illegally. That had it not been for your reversing of the Trump policies, for your open border policy, those crimes would have been committed. I've got another simple question. Do you ever, when you go to bed at night, do you have any regrets? Do you have any remorse for your complicity,
Senator,
in these crimes? I mean, your open border policy has aided and abetted the murder of Americans, the rape of Americans. There are people have lost their loved ones because of this catastrophe, this open border policy. Do you have any remorse? Do you have any regrets?
Senator, 2 points. One, very importantly, all of our hearts break for the victims of these heinous crimes and their loved ones. Secondly, the criminals who committed those crimes are responsible for their criminal conduct.
They wouldn't have been into this country had you not allowed them in through your open border. Do you ever call up the families of the crime victims? Do you ever talk to Laken Riley's family?
Senator, as I stated previously, all of our hearts break for the loved ones of those who have been lost at the hands of criminal conduct.
Good. Okay, so your heart is broken. Do you have regrets? Do you admit your culpability here? Do you admit that your actions have resulted in the deaths and the murders and the assaults of thousands of Americans? I've got the CBP statistics here. Assault and battery up 5.7 times over the last few years what it was in 2020. Homicide up 17 times. Again, these are from keep people in this country illegally. Sexual offenses up 2.5 times. Again, that's the direct result of your actions, of President Biden's actions. Quite honestly, of actions of Democrats in the Senate who refused to vote to complete the wall, which would have helped. It's not the full solution. The full solution is actually having a president and Secretary of Homeland Security that wants a secure border. Our problem is we have a president, a Secretary of Homeland Security, Democrats in Congress, who want an open border that caused this problem, and they won't admit it. They won't admit it. President Trump had the authority, used that exact same presidential authority to open up the border. Now you refuse to secure the border. And by the way, this bipartisan bill, let me paraphrase, pretty accurate quote of Senator Schumer to Politico. He said, we were playing chess, they were playing checkers, and we got our Ukraine funding. And we're in a lot better shape than we were 3 months ago on the border. You weren't negotiating to secure the border. You were negotiating for political cover for yourself, for President Biden, or for the Democrats in the Senate and Congress. That's what you were doing. You were not serious. If you were serious about securing the border, you could have done it. By the way, if you were serious about having a closed border, a secure border, you would have let it remain secure. You would have left those policies that worked, that secured the border, that would have allowed us to establish a functioning legal immigration system. But you blew it all up. And that's the result. That's the result. That's the catastrophe. And you've been denying before this committee repeatedly that this isn't even it's not even a problem, Senator. It's a challenge. This is a catastrophe, and I cannot believe you have no remorse.
Expired. Senator Langford.
Secretary Mayorkas, you and I have spent a lot of time together.